Hi guys, welcome back to Miss Bellina's Story Time. I'm so excited to share this book with you today for many reasons. One of which is that this story is about this cute little bear called Paddington Bear. And the reason I'm excited about sharing this story is because I have a little friend who lives in Texas, and her name is Ocean. And Ocean recently celebrated her birthday. So I chose this book in honor of her birthday and also because she loves Paddington Bear. Happy birthday, Ocean. I hope you had a wonderful time, and I hope that you'll enjoy this book. Are you ready? Okay, guys, let's sit back and get ready for this story, Paddington Bear in the Garden. It's written by Michael Bond and it's illustrated by R.W. Alley. Okay, we're going to start off first by learning 3 words that you may not have heard before, and they're in this story. And I want you to be ready to understand what those words mean. The first word is pence, and pence means coins, okay? Like 2 cents. So you're going to hear the word pence, and they're referring to money, coins, okay? The second word I'd like you to be prepared for is hotly. Hotly. That means to be excited and angry. A little angry. And the third word that you're going to learn is called elevenses. Elevenses? Yes. That word means to take a short break, to have light refreshments at 11 o'clock. That's right. Something I think people do in Britain. Okay, are you ready? When you hear those 3 words in the story, raise your hand. Okay? All right. And that will tell me that not only are you listening, but you remember those 3 words. Okay, let's begin. Paddington Bear in the Garden by Michael Bond and R.W. Alley. One morning, Paddington took some paper and a pencil into the garden and began making a list of all the nice things he could think of about being a bear and living with the Browns. To start with, he had a room of his own and a warm bed to sleep in. And he had marmalade for breakfast every morning. In darkest Peru, he was only allowed to have marmalade on Sundays. The list grew longer and longer, and he had nearly run out of paper before he realized he had left out one of the nicest things of all. The garden! Paddington liked the Browns' garden. Apart from the occasional noise from a nearby building site, it was so quiet and peaceful, it didn't seem like being in London at all. But nice gardens don't just happen. They usually require a lot of hard work and The one at number 232 Windsor Gardens was no exception. Mr. Brown had to mow the lawn twice a week, and Mrs. Brown was kept busy weeding the flower beds. There was always something to do. Even Mrs. Bird lent a hand whenever she had a spare moment. It was Mrs. Bird who first suggested giving Jonathan, Judy, and Paddington each a piece of the garden. It will keep certain bears out of mischief, she said meaningly, and it'll help you both at the same time. Mr. Brown agreed it was a very good idea, and he measured out 3 plots at the far end of the lawn. Paddington was most excited. "I don't suppose there are many bears who have their own garden," he exclaimed. Early the next morning, all 3 set to work. Judy decided to make a flower bed, and Jonathan had his eye on some old paving stones, but Paddington didn't know what to do. In the past, he had often found that gardening was much harder work than it looked, especially when he only had paws. In the end, armed with a jar of Mrs. Bird's homemade marmalade, he borrowed Mr. Brown's wheelbarrow and he set off to look for new ideas. His first stop was a booth in the market, and there he bought a book called How to Plan Your Garden by Lionel Trugg. The book came complete with a large packet of assorted seeds, and if the picture on the front cover was anything to go by, gardening must be very relaxing. Mr. Trugg seemed to do most of his planning while lying in a hammock. By the end of the book, without lifting a finger, he was surrounded by blooms of every possible size and color. Paddington decided it was a very good value indeed, especially when the owner of the booth gave him 2 pence change. Remember that word pence? He gave him back 2 cents change, or 2 coins. That's what they call it in London. Mr. Trugg's book was full of useful hints and tips, and Paddington couldn't wait to try some of them out. The very first tip suggested that before starting work, it was a good idea to close your eyes and try to picture what the garden would look like when it was finished. Having walked into a lamppost by mistake, whoops, Paddington decided to read another page or 2, and there he found a much better idea. Mr. Trugg advised standing back and looking at the site from a safe distance, preferably from somewhere up high. He knew just the spot. By the time Paddington reached the building site near the Browns' house, it was in the middle of the morning, and the men were all at their tea break. Placing his jar of marmalade on a wooden platform for safekeeping, he sat on a pile of bricks for a rest while he considered the matter. There was no one around, and there was a ladder nearby. Mr. Trugg was quite right. The Browns' garden did look very different from high up. Judy was digging away at her patch of ground, and not far away, Jonathan was trying to break a paving stone in two. Just then, Paddington heard the sound of an engine starting, and standing well back, in case Mrs. Bird saw him, he peered through a gap in the boards. As he did so, his eyes nearly popped open. On the ground just below him, a man was emptying a load of concrete on the very spot where he had left his jar of marmalade. Oh no! Paddington scrambled back down the ladder as fast as his legs would carry him, reaching the bottom just as the foreman came around a corner. "Is anything wrong?" asked the man. "You look upset." "My jar's been buried!" exclaimed Paddington hotly. That means angrily or excited. Pointing to the pile of concrete, it had some of Mrs. Bird's best golden chunks in it, too. Oh no! His poor jar of marmalade. The foreman called his men together. "There's a young bear, gentlemen, here, who's lost some very valuable chunks," he said urgently. "Better get cracking." "I won't ask how your jar got there," he said, turning to Paddington as the men set to work clearing the concrete into small piles, "or what you were doing up on that ladder." "I'm glad of that," said Paddington politely, raising his hat. Oh, he didn't want any trouble. Suddenly, there was a whirring sound from somewhere overhead, and to Paddington's surprise, the platform landed at his feet. "My marmalade!" he exclaimed thankfully. "Your marmalade?" repeated the foreman, staring at the jar. "Did you say marmalade?" "That's right," said Paddington. "I put it there ready for my 11ses. 11ses, that means his break for a light refreshment at 11 o'clock. It must have been taken up by mistake. Now the top's come off." Uh-oh. What's he gonna do? It was the foreman's turn to look, as though he could hardly believe his eyes. "That's special quick-drying cement," he wailed. "It's probably rock hard already, ruined by a bear's marmalade. No one will give me 2 pence for it now." There's that word pence. No one will give him 2 cents for it now. "I will," said Paddington eagerly. I have an idea. I wonder what his idea is. It took Paddington several trips to take all the lumps of concrete home in the wheelbarrow, and it kept him busy for most of the week. When the builders saw the rock garden he had made, they were most impressed, and the foreman even gave Paddington some plants to finish it off until his seeds started to grow. It's National Garden Day on Saturday, he said. There are some very famous people judging it. I'll spread the word around. You never know your luck. Oh, wouldn't that be exciting if Paddington won? The foreman was as good as his word, and on Saturday, half the neighborhood turned up at number 32 Windsor Garden to see the judges arrive. Wow! Paddington nearly fell over backward in surprise when he discovered that no less a person than Mr. Lionel Trugg himself was leading the procession. Remember, Lionel Trugg was the author of the book that Paddington had bought. How cool! It's very good of you to get out of your hammock, Mr. Trugg, he exclaimed. Not at all, said Lionel Trugg. My pleasure. I must say I love your orange stones. Where did you find them? I didn't, said Paddington. I think they found me, thanks to the builders. Congratulations, said Mr. Trugg as he handed Paddington a gold star. It's good to see a young bear taking up gardening. I hope you will be the first of many, and to show how pleased he was, he gave both Jonathan and Judy a silver medal so that they wouldn't feel left out. Who would have believed it, said Mr. Brown, as the last of the crowd departed. You must write and tell Aunt Lucy all about it, said Mrs. Bird. They'll be very excited in the Home for Retired Bears when they hear the news. Paddington thought that was a good idea, but he had something to do first. Look at him with his wonderful star. Ah, I'm so proud of Paddington Bear. He wanted to add one more important item to his list of all the nice things there were about being a bear and living with the Browns. Having my own rock garden. Then he signed his name and added his special paw print just to show it was genuine. The end. And that's the story of Paddington Bear in the garden. I hope you guys enjoyed it, especially you, Ocean, because this was read especially for you. Happy birthday! All right, everyone, have a great day. And if you're celebrating your birthday this month also, happy birthday to you too. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.